Hello there, we're the Sky Squad, an endogenic and adaptive system of 21 people. In co-front we have Tiffany and Melody, two members of the trio that started off this system. This is a video for the Plural Positivity World Conference about our personal experience with coming out as plural. A follow-up video will contain some advice and tips for those who may want to come out to family, friends, acquaintances, or even strangers. There is a separate panel about this within the conference, but we felt like giving our own personalized account and perspective on the issue. Alright, so first off, Tiffany speaking now, since I'm the first one who was in this system, and our experiences with sort of coming out as plural were basically mine, since I was the one who was the first person here and who had to explain anything to everything else, to everyone else. So what is my experience with coming out as plural? Well, our story starts off sort of simply, and I'll spare most of the details. I had imaginary friends into adulthood, and one of them was this sort of a spirit named Aqua, based on the concept in the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise with like ancient spirits living in a host body and be able to control it, sort of. So over the course of several years that I had Aqua sharing and controlling the body with me, she sort of imprinted on my brain enough to gain her own autonomy. At some point, she got involved in a role play with my friend group in college, role playing as a character that was based off of her. And she ended up getting attached to this friend group, and she wanted to reveal herself to them as, well, herself rather than just a roleplay character. And she really wanted them to be her friends and not just mine. So a bit after some deliberation on the matter, we decided to open up to them one by one. They all took the news pretty well, and they were really supportive on the situation, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. A few years later, however, I sort of tried to get rid of all my imaginary friends to kind of help me, grow up and move on with my life, because of the whole perception that imaginary friends are like something childish and adults shouldn't have them. So this included Aqua, because I assumed that she was also still an imaginary friend. However, she came back several months later while I was struggling with my last semester of college. So when she came back, she decided she wanted to be called Melody now. So that's, her name in the system, Melody. It was possible that she'd become a headmate long before this, but this was basically the point where we were pretty sure, okay, this is not imaginary anymore, this is real. And so one of the friends that we'd come out to previously about the issue helped us sort of transition and to sharing the body again. And it turns out that this person also had a sort of plural adjacent experience as well. And he helped us learn how to get along and work together as a unit rather than just two people fighting for dominance and control. It was actually kind of comforting to know that someone we knew had a similar experience to us and we never even knew about it. So when I graduated college with Melody with me again, I decided this is a really big, important part of my life now, and I should tell my parents about it, because I didn't want to have to make her keep hiding her identity in our own home anymore. Sorry, I'm just checking the audio. So I told them what was going on. I said, hey, this is Melody, and she's sharing a brain with me. She's sharing a body with me. They were kind of shell-shocked about it, and my mother tried to play it off, oh, I'm your mother, I knew it the whole time, which I doubted, but, it's not like I can really prove or disprove this. But anyway, my father kind of assumed that I had a disorder and was like, oh no, something horrible happened, I must have done something horribly wrong in order for her to now have another person in her head. So it was really, they were concerned, but they just really didn't understand it. And it didn't help that Melody had a sort of abrasive personality. So she is how she is. She doesn't mean to be bad or rude or harmful, but she rubs certain people the wrong way, and my parents didn't really take that well. So they kind of assumed that she was holding me back, that somehow I was being hurt by her presence, and this simply was not true. I was, she'd help my life. She'd help me deal with college. She even, saved my life once or twice. So my parents just didn't really get it, and they didn't treat her the best. But over time, as the system sort of grew and both of my parents got used to it, they kind of sort of started getting a little bit more supportive. My mother especially, she tries to treat us as all as equals, though she's still very focused on me since I'm, the original who she's known for, since I was born. But she's trying to treat the others with respect too, and she even tries to get to know their names and know who's fronting, and tries to get sort of, keep track of everyone's mannerisms and whether they, like physical contact or not, etc. But she even tries to call us Sky, which is our system name, and hopefully it's going to be our legal name. So she tries to call us Sky, but she forgets because, in her old age, her memory is not perfect. But she's clearly very much trying, which is actually quite a relief. My father's not really there yet. He's, he acknowledges that we're all separate, but he doesn't really treat us that way. He doesn't really understand or acknowledge that we're different people with different preferences, to like, hugs. Like some of us don't like hugs and other people are fine with them. He sort of homogenizes us a lot and doesn't use any names. Like he tries to avoid using any name at all. He doesn't call us Tiffany. He doesn't call us Sky. He doesn't call us anything. So it feels like he's just trying to ignore it rather than embrace it, which is a little frustrating, but you can't win every battle. But anyway, sometime after I came out to my parents about Melody, I also told my psychiatrist about her. And I know this psych basically since I was a child, and since I've been going to that clinic. So I trusted her with this information. But unfortunately, at first she seemed really understanding and supportive, like, oh yes, okay, this is Melody. She's part of you or whatever, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And then on a particular visit, she sort of did a bit of a turnaround and said, oh, Melody, I think, is holding you back. I think Melody's a delusion and you need to separate from her. And that experience was just really, really, really upsetting. And it kind of broke my trust in that, psychiatrist. And it broke Melody's trust too, because Melody was like, oh, here's someone who a mental health professional who knows me and understands me and like thinks I'm cool here, only for that to be sort of like turned around and crushed in the end. So it's kind of given us a bit of wariness about coming out to further health professionals. But thankfully, the years following, not the years, but like later that year, I switched clinics for personal reasons. Not necessarily because of this, but it was a contributing factor. I switched clinics, so I had a new psychiatrist, which we haven't told yet, and a new therapist, which I managed to work up the courage to say, hey, there's more than one person roaming around in this brain. And they were really understanding and accepting of it. And if anyone came to front and said, hey, I'm this person, they were accepting of that and tried to call them by their name. And unfortunately, I've kind of hopped therapists around this clinic not because of anything with them, but it's just, we just so happen to have to drop them and pick up the next one. So we've been through a few therapists with the current clinic, but they've all been very, very supportive and understanding of our plurality. And they try to treat us as individuals with our own like preferences and our own different names, and even try to respect the fact that some of us have like fictive pasts and have our own past memories. And that's a really validating experience, but it's really unfortunate that we've had to, hop around with therapists so much. And even now, the current therapist is leaving at the end of the month. And this is starting to become, it's giving us a little bit of trust issues with therapists, but that's a personal thing and not related to actually coming out. But anyway, moving on, changing gears a little bit. So after coming out, after finding about the plural community on Discord and platforms like Reddit and Amino, we basically spent the next few months trying to sort of learn about our situation and adjust to being plural. And it was really during that time that we realized just how much non-plural people knew about this stuff. Like even me, as the original, I was once a singlet. I didn't know anything about plurality. Even when I had Melody, I had a lot of assumptions and misinformations and whatnot. And I even ended up writing some fictional characters that were supposed to be plural, or supposed to have DID. And the other day, Melody went through the information for those characters and was like, Tiff, you did this completely wrong. This is actually really bad and feeds into a lot of harmful stereotypes. So we basically, over the course of learning about our plurality and meeting other plural people, we've realized there's a lot of stuff that singlets do not know and understand. And so having gone through some of the experiences of coming out and trying to find a space for us, we basically realized, hey, someone needs to tell other people about this so they can understand, and so that systems can feel more sort of, how do you put it, feel more comfortable and feel more understood. So we, sorry, I lost my train of thought a bit. We basically decided to be representatives of the plural community and help educate people on plurality and try sort of help pave the road to making plurality in general more accepted. So since I had graduated college and I was mostly staying home instead of socializing with peers, online spaces were pretty much my only option at this point. It would have been really nice if I knew all of this in college so I can talk to people in college, because it would have been easier to share this information with like my fellow classmates. But that's not the case, so I basically just do it on Discord. First, we started off with spaces where we were comfortable. There was a Discord server for a club I'd been in college, a server for a YouTuber that I'd been with for a few months and was pretty comfortable with. And then there was a server for a relatively small game that had just recently come out. So we changed our nicknames in those places to like Aqua & Co., with Aqua in this case being my username rather than referring to the old Aqua. And we tried to use our like emoji tags. Like I have a water droplet and Melody has a music note. So the hope was that people would be like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you using emojis? And then we go, oh, actually, there's more than one person in this brain, and here's what this means. So that went pretty well, actually. Most people didn't care or acknowledge it, but those who said, hey, what is this, seemed really understanding, supportive, and some of them were even curious and asked a lot of questions. So in those regards, it's been pretty successful trying to be actively plural in singlet spaces for the sake of educating. So once we sort of gained that confidence with our familiar spaces, we started doing this in other spaces. So if we join a new server, we'd change the nickname to our collective name and use our emojis and tags. And again, the same thing would happen. Sometimes people would ignore it. And sometimes people ask, hey, what's this? And then we explain it. And it's really been good so far. Even there might have been like a handful of incidents where people aren't really understanding and they're like, oh, that's weird, you're weird, or you like got a mental illness or something. But a lot of places are just like, oh, this is cool. And hey, if anyone gives you a hard time, then let us know. So it just feels like it's been a really successful endeavor so far. It's really surprising how many people are just okay with it or really do want to learn more. Of course, not everyone is accepting, but it's, overall we've had a very positive experience. And one of our most successful experiences in this sort of aesthetic-based server, which is actually pretty decent and pretty large by our standards at least, So we've managed to sort of introduce plurality to that server, and a lot of people there either ended up being plural themselves or inviting other systems. We got the Plural Kit bot, which is a bot that basically lets headmates make like a pseudo account to talk as themselves. So it feels like in that service it's been a particularly good experience because a lot of people are just hanging out and being casual, and then there's people who are plural and they're like, oh yeah, that's a thing, that's cool. So we definitely feel like we've helped to raise a lot of awareness about plurality to different parts of the Discord user base. Not a whole lot of people, but definitely a lot of people from different-ish walks of life. So at the very least, there's more people now that know about plurality than before we started coming out in our own plural spaces. And we think every single bit, every person counts towards, making the world overall a better place for systems. Overall, we feel really good about the journey we've taken from just, me being a singlet playing pretend in like my teens to being a system of 20 plus people who are dedicated to informing people about plurality and even helping others realize that they are plural. All right, so now we got Melody speaking to sort of wrap up this video with what we've learned from our coming out experience. First off, we acknowledge that while most people in online circles generally have positive reactions to learning about plurality, not everyone's going to be so accepting. There are people who, and particularly in the older generations, who are not going to be so understanding or will be a bit more conservative and skeptical, or are going to have already have sort of stigmas against mental illness caused by like harmful media, misinformation, and those people can be very invalidating at times. That's kind of just how things are. That's how the world works. Not everyone's going to be supportive or understanding of identities like that. But the important thing we learned is to simply take what we can get, preach to those who are willing to listen, and shrug off those who think they know better than us or don't want to understand what we go through. Secondly, we've gained immense amounts of joy and confidence from our efforts. We have a very close, supportive friend circle who accept all of us for who we are, and we're very proud of ourselves for being able to actually help people learn about this by being open and honest to our own experiences. The world is at least a little bit safer for plurals to one day come out to, and with each and every person we help educate, that's something that we can take great pride in because we helped to do that. And third of all, we've realized that we've ended up creating spaces where we feel comfortable being ourselves and expressing ourselves. And there's just something really sacred and joyous about being able to just be yourself in a space. And that's, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest liberties. The freedom of expression, the ability to speak up about what's bothering you, and the ability to be known and accepted by those around you. That's a fantastic feeling, honestly. And not only have we helped other people, but we've also ended up helping ourselves in our sort of collective healing journey because we have these places where we can feel safe and comfortable as ourselves. And thus we're able to sort of better work through the issues that are plaguing each of us individually and us as a collective. So as a bit of an aside, we've also realized that in a lot of cases, coming out as a system in a certain space may help other systems realize that they're plural, or help other systems realize, hey, you're not alone. And it's just really nice to sort of be able to say, hey, you're not alone. There's someone else who experiences this too. And that's like, again, we mentioned earlier in the video that we found that friend who had plural adjacent experiences, and we never knew about it because he just didn't talk about it, because it's just not something a lot of people talk about. And the fact that he just happened to have those experiences was really validating for us, and it was really nice to know we're not so weird. I mean, even finding those plural spaces after we realized we're a system it was really nice to go, wow, we're not just weird, and we're not just we're not weird or crazy. There's other people who are like this, and that's a really good feeling. All right, so thanks for watching. It feels really good to share this with other people, and hopefully we can encourage others to come out as plural. If you're looking for advice on how to come out as plural with different kinds of people, like friends, family, partners, etc., make sure to check out the second video in which we actually detail this advice. Also, make sure to check out Plural Events' YouTube channel for other videos connected to the Plural Positivity World Conference. See ya! Hello again, Tiffany and Melody from Sky Squad here with a follow-up video on coming out as plural for the Plural Positivity World Conference 2020. In the previous video, we explained our personal experiences with coming out as plural to various people in our lives and in various online and IRL communities. This second video, follow-up to that one, contains advice for coming out to different kinds of people and people of various relationship types and levels. The advice in this video is inspired by our own personal experiences with coming out and our own perceptions of certain relationship dynamics, as well as some observations of how our friends and acquaintances have come out as plural. Before we say anything else, we want to sort of give a bottom line for this. With any situation, you shouldn't force yourself to come out to anyone just because you think you should be honest with them or that you owe it to the plural community to come out as plural. This is information that you have a right to keep private for your safety and comfort. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. You should not come out unless you feel confident, bold, and safe enough to do so. So in most cases, especially if you're not as close to the person, it's probably best to introduce the topic casually in conversation when it becomes relevant rather than just bringing it up out of nowhere. That makes it seem more natural and probably not as jarring to process conversationally. But if you're bringing it up with the intention, like the full intention of coming out, then you can probably just bring it up once you feel comfortable and ready to do so. A generally safe way to come out is to try and bring up plurality as a topic of interest first, rather than admit to personally experiencing it. This will allow you to not only explain plurality to them before explaining your personal situation, but also gauge their response to the concept and determine if it's safe for you specifically to admit that this is something you experience. And also, when you come out as plural, you're very much allowed to keep people on a need-to-know basis. You're not obligated to tell people exactly how many headmates you have, nor do you have to introduce them to every single hubmate or tell them anything about everyone in your system. You're also not obligated to explain the exact details about how your system works, even to other systems. If you want to tell them certain things, then go for it. But don't feel like you have to lay out everything just because you decided to come out about it. So, first of all, strangers. There's strangers on the internet, and then there's strangers on the streets. By the streets, I mean like people you might encounter on, for example, public transportation, store workers, maybe like a fellow customer, someone asking you for the time, etc. Unless you want to be a walking advertisement for the concept of plurality, you really don't need to come out to every stranger you meet on the street. Like, you wouldn't really tell some random stranger your birthday or your sexuality or if you're trans or where you live. Plurality is something that you really don't need to tell anyone unless you want to, preferably when it's actually relevant to the conversation. Most strangers probably won't really care about it. For online, it's a little bit safer to out yourself as plural in non-plural spaces, even to total strangers, because of the way that online interaction works. People who don't particularly care can just look the other way, and most people generally won't even mind or might even be interested. And if people treat you badly because of it, well, you can block them, or you can leave the group or server or page or wherever it is. Aside from all this, you can also hide behind the username and not necessarily reveal any identifying information. So it's a little bit safer to come out because there's not that same face-to-face connection. Of course, you should still use discretion when coming out in a totally unfamiliar online forum. For us, we feel bold and obligated enough to do so, but you don't have to. If you don't quite trust a certain group or community, then you can wait things out while you read the atmosphere and see how comfortable you are with disclosing such information to those people, and you can get a read for how they might respond to such a thing. Acquaintances basically includes people that you see on a sort of semi-regular basis, but you don't really have a sort of special connection to. Maybe it's a clerk of a store that you visit frequently, or a neighbor, or the mailman, or the receptionist at your clinic, or your pet's doctor, things like that. These are people who you could reasonably strike up a conversation with about semi-personal things or your interests without really any heavy commitment to it. The kind of person that you might tell, oh, I've been feeling kind of sick lately, or you could, brag about your kids getting accepted to college, or stuff like that. The main point here is that this is probably a person that you could teach something new in your brief time interacting, assuming you interact with them long enough to hold a conversation. In these situations, you might feel comfortable enough to mention it as a personal situation, then go ahead and do that. They might think you strange for it because, plurality is not this super well understood concept, but it would be a great way to get some sort of education in there. Again, of course, if you're not, if you don't feel bold or safe enough to do so, then don't do it. Or if you sort of want to gauge their reaction to it instead of coming out, then again, like earlier, you can mention it as sort of a topic of interest rather than a personal experience, and see how they react, and see if you think they'll be receptive to knowing, hey, this is something I experienced. For friends, it's probably easier to sort of tell how they're going to react beforehand because, you're closer and you already presumably already talk to them on a regular basis, and you kind of judge their reaction beforehand since you know them better. Of course, there's different levels of friendship and different levels of understanding you can have about them. As explained earlier, you can try to bring it up as a concept first to get them acquainted to it, see how they react, and determine who of your friend group is the most accepting and trustworthy to tell. It's always good to sort of have people who are on your side when you're bringing up something sensitive like this, something personal that you experience. And in case things go bad with the rest of the friend group, you have at least someone who can back you up. Like we said earlier, it really should be on a need-to-know basis because this is still your personal information and you're still entitled to your privacy, even with people that you're closer to. If problems arise because of your plurality and you think you might need to come out as plural to help resolve a conflict, or you need to get some accommodation or an understanding from your friends, like say if you're prone to switching in the middle of a conversation, then it'd be best to weigh the pros and cons and your options and see who you can come out to and how much information is safe to give them. And now for partners. This is probably going to be the longest section, so bear with me a little bit. For partners, it can be very easy to feel like you're obligated to open up to them about your plurality, but again, it's a matter of feeling safe and comfortable enough to do so. And of course, it's a matter of trust above anything else. Do you trust this person enough with this information? You'll probably still have insecurities about this, considering the weight of the relationship is a little bit more than that of a friendship. If you want to gauge their possible acceptance levels, you can try asking them their opinions on other marginalized communities or subjects like mental health, LGBTQ, racism, etc. If they're accepting about these things, then they're probably going to be accepting about plural stuff, but that's not really a way to know for sure. As previously mentioned with the other relationship types, the best thing to start with is introducing them to plurality as a concept and see how they react to it. Or if they already know some stuff, you can sort of see what their understanding is so you can get them on the same page and fill any gaps in their knowledge. Fill in any gaps in their knowledge. it'd probably be good to have some answers or resources prepared in case they have questions. When you're ready, you can probably just tell them, hey, we're plural, however you want to phrase it. You can open up that line of conversation by saying, hey, this is something really important to me and it impacts my life in major ways. Please, take this seriously. If they react badly, you should probably work to help them understand it and cope with it, especially, your partners. And working through things is a very important part of managing and maintaining relationships, especially of that nature. If they're not going to treat you well under the knowledge that you're plural, it might be time to seek a new partner, since this is, it's a big part of your life, and suppressing it around a person you should otherwise feel safe around can be very damaging. Once you're out, it's probably a good idea to give information as necessary, such as who will be fronting, if any fronters need special accommodations, etc., and establish physical boundaries. Establish boundaries based on headmates. You're going to want to establish who in the system is and isn't actually dating them, or married to them, etc. What specific needs and boundaries individual people have, things like that. Stuff like, preferred contact or affection levels, pronouns, even any allergies they might have that your partner will need to be aware of. If you end up sort of accidentally coming out as plural, maybe you say we by habit, or you mention that a headmate did this or that, the best way to follow it up is to just be casual about it as best you can. Ultimately, you and your partner are going to have to discuss and decide how your plurality is going to affect the relationship, and if they can handle something like this in their lives. They're not necessarily responsible for dealing with your plural stuff, but if they're going to be a partner, then they should be at least cope with the fact that, this is a thing that's going to happen, and they're going to have to be prepared to deal with aspects of it, such as different fronters or people with certain interaction needs. And again, this is all need-to-know basis. You don't owe anyone a list of your headmates or detailed information about them, about who's in your system, or even how you formed. If you're comfortable sharing it, then great. If they show interest in these things, that's also great, but you still have a right to your privacy. If they're insisting that they need to know this information because, I'm your partner, you have to tell me, it might be a red flag that either they don't understand it and the need for privacy, or they're a bit controlling, and again, you might need to seek another partner. Of course, all of this generally goes for other relationship types too, but in this case, you're probably interacting with them more and more physically or emotionally close to them, so this might become more relevant or important for such a situation. Now, things can get a little bit complicated when talking about familial relationships. On the one hand, there may be a sort of legal or social obligation to stay with them and keep interacting with them, especially if you're a minor who can't just leave the house and your parents don't like that you're plural. So take extra care when coming out to family. A good strategy, like I alluded to earlier, is to come out first to family members that you like and trust, and then work your way outwards towards the less favored and accepting ones. For example, maybe you're really close to an aunt or a sibling, and you can tell them first to get their support before you try telling, say, that one uncle who's known for being a bigot, or your parents who might not be so understanding or supportive of psychological or marginalized issues. The point of this is to sort of gain a support system while you're working your way towards coming out, so that if something happens, you have people who know and support you to fall back on. Other than that, a lot of the same tips really apply here. Open up the conversation with, hey, this is important to me, or try to tell them about plurality to gauge your interest and support levels. Keep information on a need-to-know basis, and explain things when you feel safe and ready. And finally, we have bosses, coworkers, health professionals, etc. So unless it severely affects your situation in some way, or you need some kind of accommodation that can only be given when the situation is understood, you shouldn't feel obligated to come out to any people you know in a work or health setting. it's really none of their business unless it affects your ability to actually work or it affects your health in some way. Some examples of when you probably should come out, but don't have to unless you feel comfortable or safe doing so, or you need to disclose the information for the sake of important accommodations like allergies. If you're a dissociative system that can't handle switches, a little may come out during work, or a certain headmate has an allergy to a certain kind of medicine. Stuff like that is probably when you should come out for the sake of your health, but you don't need to necessarily, again, tell all of the information about your system, just what you need in order to be accommodated. In the work example, you're probably going to want to inform your supervisor that you need an accommodation, or let a trusted coworker know so they can help any confused headmates or keep an eye out for dissociation and stuff like that. But if you're not able to safely come out in the workplace, instead try leaving a note on your phone or your locker for any, emergency situations, so that way any confused headmates will know what to do. In the case of the health professional, again, only come out if it's sort of relevant to your health, such as if you have a headmate that might pose a danger to the body, or if a certain headmate needs special prescriptions or conditions. If you choose to do so because it will make things easier, then of course feel free to do so. If there's a chance that a given healthcare professional will misunderstand the situation, treat you a certain way, definitely proceed with caution, but probably err on the side of whatever is going to, help your system the most. So weigh the pros and cons before doing anything. So, at the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, we're going to summarize some of the information that we've said in this video. First off, you don't have to come out to anyone or give them every piece of information about your system. You have a right to your secrecy and privacy. You should only come out if you feel comfortable and safe enough to do so. However, you may find that you need to explain your plurality for health reasons, because maybe a headmate has an allergy or needs a prescription, or you have memory gaps that a health care provider or supervisor may need to be aware of. Most people probably won't care or will otherwise be accepting, but there may still be people who will react negatively, so you need to be prepared for that. If you want to gauge how someone will react to your plurality, try explaining plural things first and frame it as a sort of special personal interest, and see what they think about it and how they react to it. For more casual relationships or with strangers, it's probably best to bring up the topic as it becomes relevant in the conversation rather than just bringing it up out of nowhere. This can help make it easier for the other people to process the information in conversation. For closer relationships such as partnerships or familial relationships, make sure to establish boundaries and preferences with regard to particular headmates so no one ends up confused or uncomfortable. So, that's basically it. Thanks for watching. Apologies again for all the repetition, and we wish you the best of luck in your coming out. Please share this video with other people to help others who may be considering it. As we said with the last video, be sure to check out Plural Events YouTube channel for other videos connected to the Plural Positivity World Conference. See ya!